Chapter 7. The Escape. Friday came. That dark and cold evening made Matteo wish to be anywhere else. The only source of heat in the chapel were the candles illuminating the choral music. Each voice echoed beautifully, but had the air of a bitter frost. Matteo knew his plan would be a great risk. His family might not see him again. He told his parents that he needed his guitar for rehearsals, giving him an excuse to bring it. All of his other belongings were in the rucksack, which didn't appear out of the ordinary. He left behind Violante's books of study. The rehearsal that night seemed to never end. Matteo's mind raced about everything except music. He needed to act accordingly. His parents wouldn't notice anything suspicious for a few hours, but Matteo wanted to be sure he wouldn't get caught and taken home. He endured the rehearsal a while longer, until it finally ended. Matteo, in haste, grabbed his belongings and headed out of the chapel. He walked down the street. The cold air made him huddle in his coat. He spotted the carriage a block down, awaiting him. In being sure it was his ride, he gave the coachman a note of address. He then climbed in, and the horse began to trot. Part of him had regrets in leaving his family. They would be worried sick by dawn, but Matteo wanted a life of his own. It didn't take long to reach the edge of Florence, where a large mail coach was getting ready to depart. Many were already seated about, so Matteo had to squeeze himself in a spot. It was a cramped ride, as the team of horses jogged into the country. The time on the grinding road would be long and intense. Days passed before they arrived at the Italian border. Guards of Italy and Austria strolled about, keeping an eye out for the coaches passing. As the mail coach took a pause before crossing, Matteo watched an Italian guard ride on horseback to a few comrades. He handed a letter to them, stating, "Keep on the lookout for a runaway boy of 15. A report has been spread that he is missing." That very news forced Matteo to huddle in his seat. The man beside him glanced in suspicion. To Matteo's thanks, the coach carried on in a hurry, making it too late for any confrontations. The sight of Austria ahead felt more beautiful than ever before. After many weeks, rest stops, and switching coaches, Matteo made it to the land his heart longed for, France. Within a few days, he came to the outskirts of Paris. There was an inn at the city's edge where he could rest up and get his papers organized to sign up for the military. He couldn't wait to be a soldier, hoping to be a guard in the streets of Paris. With the night's rest, Matteo headed in good spirits to the recruiting center. He carried in nice order his papers and funds. His new life was beginning. In confidence, he entered the correct building and approached the front desk. Matteo stated in fine French, "Je voudrais rejoindre l'armée." "You?" The secretary raised his eyebrows in a chuckle. He looked down at the young boy. "How old are you?" 15. "Child, that is too young to be in war, unless your parish is offering the funds." "I have the funds." Matteo handed in the sufficient amount. The secretary nodded. "I suppose we do have room in our last boy regiment. You will serve as a guard." "Excellent! Where?" "You shall be placed in the city of Hamburg of Prussia. That is where most of our young soldiers are stationed at the moment." "All right," Matteo sighed within. His hopes of living in Paris had taken a change. He was willing to accept this new course, as he needed a means to support himself in his current circumstance. France would have to wait. Matteo filled out the papers given to him, consenting to join and abide by the French law. After that was complete, he was given a few days to rest before heading to Hamburg. It was much needed. His rooms were now paid for, as he was a member of the French army. They also provided a good meal, fresh clothes, and a nice new uniform. Matteo tried it on. It felt quite proper, coming with a real sword. The weapon was light, but he was on the shorter side, making it appear a much more mature weapon for a young boy. He had little experience with swordsmanship, but was determined to use it if needed. He then changed into his sleepwear to rest on a good bed. The thoughts before falling asleep consisted of the daunting journey so far. He couldn't believe he had made it thus far, and feeling more free than ever before, Matteo slept well. The next morning, Matteo gathered his belongings, wearing his uniform. He joined a coach with fellow recruits, headed for Hamburg. All of them were at least 18, leaving him the youngest and smallest. They laughed a bit as the sword at his side dragged on the ground. One asked, "How did they let you here?" "I applied," Matteo answered, hopping on a seat up top with his bag and guitar case. Another noticed the guitar. "You play?" "Si," Matteo answered. The whole troop snickered at his Italian accent. Matteo suggested, "I can play you some." He got his guitar out as the coach began to set off. The young men watched, giggling at first, thinking this little youngster wouldn't last a day in their troop. Matteo began picking a divine melody of Giuliani, then one of his own. The men were silent as they listened to such sweet tones. After a good hour of music, Matteo put the guitar away. All of the men clapped. The group now respected Matteo. One became especially fond of him, becoming a friend. He was 27, with the French name of Jean. He asked Matteo, "What has made you join the French arms? It's not common for one your age." "I've run away," Matteo answered. "I needed something to fall back on." "You don't seem like one to fight, but you certainly will provide entertainment." "That works perfectly for me." Matteo felt more comfortable with the group. It seemed that his talents were useful already.